I thought she stood me up. Until she came crying and said, "Don't leave." At 7:48 on a Thursday night, I laid 2 20s under a water glass, pushed back from the corner table at Bellamy's, and told myself not to look at the door again. I had watched it open for couples, families, strangers, and one delivery driver who only wanted the kitchen, but not for Grace Miller. The waiter had stopped asking if I wanted to wait a little longer. My phone had no missed call, no text, not even one of Grace's careful apologies with proper punctuation. I grabbed my coat and stepped outside into the rain, feeling like a fool for believing a woman like her might really want dinner with me. Then I heard my name. Jack. Grace stood across the sidewalk, soaked through, one hand braced against the brick wall like she had run until her body gave out. Her hair clung to her face, her eyes were red. She looked at the coat in my hand, then at the restaurant door closing behind me, and her expression broke. "Don't leave," she said. I should have asked where she had been. I should have guarded my pride. Instead, I stood there with rain sliding down my collar, staring at the woman I had spent 6 weeks pretending I liked only as a client. If you have ever waited for someone and told yourself you were done, only to see them arrive with tears in their eyes, hit like and subscribe, and tell me in the comments, would you leave or would you stay long enough to hear the truth? I stayed, not because I was noble. I stayed because Grace Miller looked steady even when life was breaking under her feet, and seeing her tremble scared me more than embarrassment ever could. "Come under the awning," I said. She shook her head. "I didn't stand you up. I didn't say you did. You were leaving. Because you were almost an hour late." Her mouth opened, then closed. The rain made the mascara under her eyes look darker, but this was not careless crying. It was the silent kind that comes after a person has held herself together in public too long. "I tried to come," she said. "I got to the block. I saw you through the window. Then Preston was here. The name landed between us like a dropped glass. Preston Vale was her former fiancé, her landlord's son, and the kind of man who wore expensive confidence like it had been tailored for him. He owned half the historic strip on Darby Avenue, including the red brick building where Grace ran the Miller Music Room, a small school for kids whose families could not afford private lessons. My restoration shop was 2 doors down. For 6 weeks, I had heard piano scales through my office wall and seen Grace carry dented instrument cases like they were treasure. "What did he do?" I asked. "He told me if I had dinner with you tonight, he'd consider it proof that I was refusing to negotiate in good faith." "Negotiate what?" "The lease, the building, everything." She wiped her cheek, angry at her own tears. "He wants me out by the end of the month. He offered me money to leave quietly. Then he offered me my old life back." "Your old life?" "The one where I stand beside him at fundraisers and smile while he decides which parts of me are practical." I looked toward my truck. "Let me drive you home. I didn't come here for rescue." "I know." "Do you?" I nodded toward the curb. "Then let me drive you wherever you're strong enough to be honest." That almost made her smile. It was small and gone too fast, but it was there. "My school," she said. "I need to go there. I need to." 6 weeks earlier, Grace had walked into my shop with a broken piano bench in her arms and a stubborn expression on her face. I owned Turner Restoration, a small Nashville business that survived on church pews, antique cabinets, and the occasional rich person who wanted distressed wood without actual distress. She set the bench on my counter and said, "Can you fix this without making it look new?" I told her that was the only kind of fixing I trusted. She laughed, and the shop felt less empty. After that, she brought coffee on Wednesdays, and I walked repaired stools back to her studio on Fridays. Grace did not flirt in the usual way. She noticed. She noticed my sore hand and left peppermint salve on my desk. She noticed I skipped lunch and once set a sandwich beside the clamps without comment. She noticed the photograph of my parents outside their farmhouse and asked about the porch swing before she asked about me. So when I asked her to dinner, I did it badly. I was tightening a cabinet hinge while she held a flashlight. I was thinking dinner might balance the account, I said. She lowered the flashlight. Are you asking as my repairman or as Jack? As Jack, I said, but he is also insured and bonded. She laughed, then went quiet. Dinner could complicate things. It could, I said. But dinner is still optional. She looked at the cabinet, then at me. Thursday? Bellamy's? 7. For 2 days, I felt ridiculous and alive. By 7:48 that Thursday, I had decided Grace had changed her mind and lacked the courage to tell me. Now she sat beside me in my truck, soaked and silent, clutching a folder to her chest. The Miller music room was dark when we reached Darby Avenue. The rain had softened to mist, and the neon sign from the bar across the street painted red streaks on the wet pavement. Grace unlocked the side door with shaking fingers. I followed her up the narrow stairs, past posters for spring recitals and summer scholarships. At the top, she stopped. The studio door stood half an inch open. Stay behind me, I said. She gave me a look that said she hated the instruction but understood the danger. I pushed the door slowly. The front room smelled like damp paper and old carpet. Nothing large was smashed, but someone had gone through the filing cabinet. Student folders lay on the floor. A box of donated recorders had been tipped over. The glass jar labeled Piano Tuning Fund was empty. Grace moved past me and dropped to her knees, gathering papers with both hands. It was locked. I checked the back window. The latch had been forced, and rain had blown onto the sill. Do you keep cash here? Only small donations. She held up the folder she had carried in her coat. This is what they wanted. What is it? Our original lease addendum. Mr. Vale signed it before he got sick. Preston says it doesn't exist. The landlord's father? She nodded. The building can be redeveloped if all commercial tenants agree to early termination. My addendum says that as long as I maintain the school and pass safety inspection, they have to give me 18 months or help relocate me within the neighborhood. And Preston knew you had a copy? He saw me put it in my bag at the hospital today. The hospital? Her face tightened. She had said more than she meant to. I waited. I had learned in my work that forcing a split too soon ruins the grain. Mr. Vale had a stroke this afternoon, she said. Preston called because I'm still listed as a contact from when we were engaged. I went because it felt right. Preston used the hallway outside intensive care to tell me the building sale was moving forward. He said if I fought him, he would bury me in legal fees. Then he followed me to Bellamy's. I felt anger rise. And he broke in here while you were at the restaurant? I don't know. Maybe he sent someone. Maybe I'm being dramatic. You're not. I took pictures of the window, the lock, the scattered papers, the empty jar. You need a police report. I need $20,000 for repairs, insurance updates, and an attorney. That too. Her tired laugh faded fast. I helped her stack papers on the piano. Then I saw a photograph half hidden under the bench. In it, Grace stood younger beside Preston at some black tie event. Her smile was practiced and dim. His hand rested at the back of her neck. Not quite a hold, not quite freedom. She saw me see it. I keep that to remind myself not to confuse being chosen with being kept. The words hit harder than I expected. My ex-wife used to say I was too steady, I said before I could stop myself. She said being loved by me felt like living next to a clock. Grace's eyes softened. That's cruel to say to someone who shows up. She left anyway. Then maybe she didn't know the difference between steady and stuck. For a moment, rain tapping the window filled the room. I had not told anyone that much in years. Grace looked away first, not to dismiss it, but to give it privacy. Downstairs, a car door closed. Preston's voice carried from below. Grace. I only want to talk. She froze. He knows I'm here. Then let him talk tomorrow with an officer present. If I file a report, this becomes war. No, I said. It becomes a record. She looked at the children's chairs, the fallen folders, the broken lock. Then she called the non-emergency line and reported the break-in with a voice that shook but did not fold. Preston waited on the sidewalk for 15 minutes, then left before the officer arrived. By midnight, the report was filed. The window was boarded with plywood from my shop, and Grace sat on the piano bench wearing a dry sweatshirt of mine over her dress. She held a mug of gas station tea in both hands. You missed dinner, I said. So did you? I had bread. That is not dinner. It was emotionally complicated bread. She smiled into the mug. I'm sorry. I know. No, I need to say it right. She set the tea down. I should have texted you when Preston stopped me. I should have walked into the restaurant sooner. I saw you sitting there, and for one stupid minute I thought if I turned around, I could keep you out of the mess. You thought deciding for me was kindness. She winced. Yes, I hate that kind of kindness. I'm learning. I am too. Her eyes searched mine. Why did you stay? Because when she said don't leave, every locked room in me opened. Because I had wanted to be chosen by someone who knew what leaving cost. Because Grace in my sweatshirt, surrounded by broken locks and children's music books, looked more like home than any place I had been in years. But I only said, because you asked me to. She nodded, and something between us changed. Not into romance yet, not fully, but into trust with a pulse. The next morning, Trouble came, wearing a navy suit and polished shoes. Preston Vale walked into my shop at 9:10, carrying 2 coffees like we were colleagues. Ray, my foreman, saw him first, and raised his eyebrows from the sanding table. Preston placed a cup on my desk, without asking. I'm putting together a restoration package for the Darby Avenue redevelopment, he said. Storefronts, staircases, historical details. 6 figures over 8 months. More if investors approve the boutique hotel. Ray went still behind him. Preston slid a folder across my desk. I'd like your company to bid. Why? Because you're good. Because local optics matter. And because Grace trusts you, which means your professional assessment of the building could help everyone accept reality. There it was. Not a bribe. Men like Preston rarely used words that could stain their cuffs. He wanted my name on a report saying the building was too damaged for community use. He wanted Grace to feel surrounded. I did not touch the folder. You broke into her studio. His expression barely moved. Careful. I took pictures of a sad little room with an old lock. File whatever reports you want. Grace is overwhelmed, and overwhelmed people misplace things. I stood. Get out. That building is going to sell, Mr. Turner. The only question is whether you profit from the transition or get sentimental and watch someone else do the work. Ray stepped closer, but I lifted a hand. Preston looked at him, then back at me. You don't know her history, he said. Grace likes rescuing broken things until they ask something of her. Then she runs. I thought of her in the rain, crying, telling me not to leave. Maybe she runs from cages. For the first time, his face hardened. Tell her the inspection is next Friday. If she fails, the community use clause is void. She has 7 days. He left the coffee untouched on my desk. I poured it down the utility sink. Ray let out a low whistle. 6 figures, Jack. I know. We could use 6 figures. I know that too. He did not argue. Ray had worked with me since the year my marriage ended and my first shop almost folded. He knew the difference between refusing money and pretending money did not matter. At noon, I walked to Grace's studio. She was teaching a boy named Marcus how to hold a violin bow without crushing it. She saw my face through the interior window and finished the lesson with calm patience. When Marcus left, she closed the door. What did he do? He offered me the Darby restoration package. She looked down. I refused. Her head came up. Jack. I said I refused. Not that I solved it. You shouldn't have done that without thinking. I did think, not long enough. I almost laughed, then realized she was truly upset. Are you angry that I didn't take his money? I'm angry that you might resent me when your business feels the cost. That is my decision. People love to make decisions around me and call it loyalty, she said. Then later, when the bill comes, they look at me like I wrote it. I stepped back, letting the words have room. Then here is the bill in advance. Refusing Preston may cost me a contract. It may make the next few months tight. I am not doing it because you owe me anything. I'm doing it because my signature is not for sale. Her shoulders lowered. And because I know old buildings. If the inspection is next Friday, you need repairs. I can pay something. I'll invoice the school at cost for materials and let the labor be donated through my shop's community hours. Do you have community hours? We do now. She looked like she wanted to refuse out of habit. Then Marcus appeared in the doorway, backpack in hand. Miss Miller, are they closing us? Grace crouched immediately. Not if I can help it. Not if I can help it. Not a pretty lie. I respected her more for that. Marcus nodded and left. Grace stayed crouched after he was gone. I crouched across from her, not touching. I can't fail them, she whispered. You won't do it alone. I don't know how to do that. Neither do I. That was the first honest foundation we laid. For the next week, my shop and her studio became one long hallway of sawdust, music, and arguments. Ray fixed the stair rail with 2 apprentices. I replaced rotted trim. Grace organized parents to repaint, catalog instruments, and clear storage. She refused every offer that sounded like charity, and accepted every offer that came with a task list. At night, when the kids were gone, she sat on the floor sorting receipts while I patched plaster. We talked in pieces. I learned she had grown up above her mother's laundromat in East Nashville, and that music had been the one thing in her life no one could pawn, drink away, or pack in a hurry. Mr. Vale had funded her college scholarship after hearing her play at a church benefit. Years later, when she and Preston got engaged, the city called it a beautiful full-circle story. Grace called it a very expensive misunderstanding. Did you love him? I asked one night. I loved who I became when his family approved of me, she said. That's not the same thing. What made you leave? A girl at one of my workshops asked why I always said sorry before I played. I told her she should never apologize for taking up space. Then I went home and packed. I handed her a clean rag instead of taking her hand. Comfort still needed permission. My marriage ended because I kept thinking endurance was the same as love, I said. I thought if I became easier to stay with, Anna would stay. Grace folded the rag in her palm. And when she left? I didn't know what to do with all the quiet I had made for her. She looked at me with no pity, only recognition. On Wednesday night, we found the problem that could ruin everything. Behind the rear classroom, water had seeped inside the wall from a roof patch no one had touched in years. The plaster looked passable from the outside, But under pressure, my thumb went through it. Grace went very still. "Tell me the truth. It won't pass if the inspector sees this. How long to fix? Properly? 2 weeks. We have 2 days." I thought through materials, drying time, shortcuts that were safe and shortcuts that were lies. We can stabilize it, not pretty but safe. I'll need a moisture meter, sealant, a dehumidifier, and luck. I don't like relying on luck. Then rely on me for the part I know. Her eyes met mine. The room was dim except for the work light between us. Dust clung to her cheek. She looked tired enough to break, but she did not. "Okay," she said. "I'll rely on you for that part." It sounded like more than construction. The inspector arrived Friday morning with Preston 3 steps behind him. Grace wore a simple green dress, her hair pinned neatly, the original lease addendum under her arm. I stood near the rear classroom with my tool belt still on because I wanted Preston to understand I was not there as decoration. The inspection took 90 minutes. Railings, exits, electrical panel, window locks, bathroom access. Grace answered every question directly. When the inspector reached the repaired wall, my throat tightened. He pressed the moisture meter to the surface. Acceptable. He checked the bracing. Safe. He made a note. At the end, he said, "You'll need documentation from a licensed roofer for the patch above the rear classroom within 30 days. But for today, the community use space passes conditional inspection." Grace closed her eyes for half a second. Preston stepped forward. "Conditional is not final." "No," the inspector said, "but it is passable." After he left, Preston turned to Grace. "You're dragging this out for pride." Grace held the folder against her side. "I'm maintaining the use specified in my lease. You can't afford 18 months of legal pressure." "Maybe not," she said. "But I can afford today." I loved her a little in that moment. I had not meant to. It happened anyway, quiet and certain. Preston looked at me. "Still playing hero?" "No," I said. "Just doing work I can stand behind." He leaned closer. "You think she'll choose this place over safety?" "She won't. She always wants someone to stop her from leaving, but she leaves before anyone can disappoint her." Grace heard enough. Her face changed, not fear, wound. "Get out of my school," she said. Preston laughed once. Gladly. "The offer expires Monday." "What offer?" I asked after he left. She did not answer right away. Grace. She walked to the window. "A position in Atlanta. Director of Youth Programming for the Vail Arts Foundation. Salary, benefits, an apartment for the first year. If I sign, they'll give the Miller Music Room a relocation grant." "Controlled by them?" "Yes. And you?" "I go back to being a success story they can put on brochures." The room seemed to narrow around us. "Were you going to tell me?" "Yes." She turned, and exhaustion made anger difficult. "That night at Bellamy's, dinner was supposed to be me telling you I might leave. I felt the old instinct rise. Step back first, expect loss, pretend it was wisdom. So when you said don't leave, I meant that minute," she said, "and maybe more than that." "I don't know. That's the problem. I don't know what I'm allowed to ask. You're allowed to ask for anything. I'm allowed to answer. And if I ask you to wait while I decide whether to stay, that depends," I said carefully, "on whether you're deciding out of hope or fear." She flinched because truth often enters like a blade before it becomes a door. Saturday brought the photograph. A local business blog praised the redevelopment and posted a picture of me outside Grace's building shaking Preston's hand. It had been taken the morning he offered me the contract, the moment before I told him to leave. The caption read, "Local restoration expert Jack Turner expected to consult on historical conversion." Grace came into my shop holding her phone. The children were rehearsing upstairs. "Is this why you told me not to worry?" she asked. My stomach dropped. "No. Did you sign anything?" "No." "Then why is your name in the article?" "Because he wants you to think I did. Or because you're still deciding." That hurt because I had entered her life right as her building came under threat. I took a breath. "Call the reporter with me. Right now." On speaker, I stated clearly that I had not accepted or discussed any consulting role on the redevelopment and wanted a correction issued immediately. When I hung up, Grace looked ashamed. "I'm sorry. I understand why you asked. That doesn't make it fair." "No, but it makes it repairable." Her mother called next. I heard only pieces. "I haven't signed. That isn't gratitude. I'm not abandoning you." When the call ended, Grace sat on the edge of my workbench like her knees had lost their purpose. "She thinks I'm throwing away stability to embarrass the Vale family. What do you think?" I think part of me still wants someone to tell me the right answer, so I don't have to own the cost. I leaned against the opposite bench. "What do you want when nobody is watching?" She looked toward the ceiling, where the children's uneven singing floated down through old pipes and floorboards. "I want that sound to keep existing. I want to stop making my life a thank you note to people who helped me once and charged interest forever." There she was. Not broken, not rescued. Clear. "Then choose from there," I said. "And you? I want you to choose freely. And I want to take you to dinner when nobody is bleeding, breaking in, or threatening legal action." Her smile came slowly. "That sounds ambitious." That evening, Grace held an emergency parents' meeting in the recital room. She laid out the lease clause, the conditional inspection, the legal risk, and the Atlanta offer. Parents asked hard questions. Could they fundraise? Could the school become a non-profit cooperative? Mrs. Patel, an accountant, offered to review the books. Marcus's father, a roofer, offered to inspect the roof at cost. Ray volunteered my shop for a repair day before I could stop him. Grace listened to all of it. Then she said, "I am tired. I am scared. And I have been tempted to accept a safe door because it has a lock someone else controls. But this school was never only mine. If we fight as a community." Marcus raised his hand. "Can kids fight too?" Grace smiled. "Kids can practice for the benefit concert." That was how the concert began. Not as a grand plan, but as a child's question. We set it for the following Friday in the back courtyard, borrowed strings lights and folding chairs, and rehearsed until the nervous notes turned into something almost brave. During those days, we moved like people building a bridge while crossing it. I saw Grace at her most commanding, correcting tempo, calming parents, negotiating with vendors, refusing pity. I also saw her at 11 at night, barefoot on the studio floor, eating crackers because she had forgotten dinner again. I brought her soup in a thermos. She eyed it. "Is this community labor too?" "No. This is personal meddling. I don't accept meddling. You accept soup." She took the thermos. "Only because your argument is airtight." We sat with our backs against the piano while string lights swayed outside the window. "My mother asked if you were the reason I might stay," she said. "What did you say?" I said no. I nodded, pretending that did not sting. Then I said, "You were the reason I realized I wanted to." The room went quiet in a different way. "Grace, I'm not saying it correctly. You're doing fine. No, I spent too many years sounding polished when I meant trapped. I want to be plain." She set the soup aside. "When I saw you leaving Bellamy's, it felt like watching a door close that I hadn't admitted I wanted open. I asked you not to leave because I needed help that night. But I also asked because I didn't want the story of us to end before I had the courage to start it. The confession moved through me like warmth, returning to cold hands. "I'm scared too," I said. "Of me leaving? Of becoming the kind of man who waits at tables for women who already know they're gone?" She absorbed that without defending herself. "I don't know yet what happens with Atlanta." "I know. But I know I don't want Preston's life. And I know I want dinner with Jack. Not my repairman." I smiled. "He's still insured." She laughed, and when she rested her shoulder against mine, it was a choice. I did not kiss her. Not then. The moment did not ask for a claim. It asked to be trusted. Friday came clear and warm, as if the city had decided to apologize for all that rain. By 6 o'clock, the courtyard glowed with string lights, folding chairs, nervous children, and a painted sign, "Keep the music room open." Grace wore a navy dress and a silver necklace shaped like a tiny eighth note. When she saw me in a clean shirt instead of work flannel, she smiled. "You clean up well. I had professional help from a mirror." For 2 hours, hope felt possible. Marcus played his solo and only squeaked twice. Teenagers sang harmony so pure even Ray wiped his eyes and blamed sawdust. Donations climbed. Not enough to guarantee survival, but enough to make surrender look less like wisdom. Then Preston arrived. He moved through the crowd in a gray suit, his smile smooth and mournful. Grace saw him and stiffened. I stepped beside her, not in front of her. He waited until applause faded, then approached with a white envelope. "Grace," he said softly. "This is impressive, but impressive doesn't change math." She did not take the envelope. "What is that?" "A final offer. The foundation increases the relocation grant. Your students keep programming. Your mother stops worrying. You come to Atlanta with a title worthy of you. And the building? Sold? The community use clause?" Settled. The courtyard quieted. Parents watched. Children sensed adult weather and moved closer to their chairs. Preston raised his voice just enough. "No one here wants to see Grace exhaust herself for a room that can't last. Sometimes love means guiding someone toward the secure choice." I felt anger flash, but Grace spoke first. "No," she said. "Sometimes control dresses itself as concern because concern gets invited inside." A murmur moved through the crowd. Preston's face tightened. "Be careful. I am being careful, for the first time in years." She looked at the parents, then the students, then at me briefly. Not for permission, but because I was part of the room. "I'm not signing." He lowered his voice. "You will regret humiliating me. I'm not humiliating you. I'm disagreeing with you. It only feels the same because you're used to obedience." Someone in the back made a small sound that might have been a laugh or a prayer. Preston looked at me. "And you think he'll stay when the bills arrive?" The old wound in me recognized the question. It was designed for hollow places. Before I could answer, Grace turned fully toward me. In front of everyone, with string lights above her and the uncertain future behind her, she asked, "Jack, do you want to stay?" The courtyard disappeared. I saw Bellamy's awning, her rain-soaked face, the fear in her voice when she said, "Don't leave." Back then, she had asked from panic. Now she asked from choice. "Yes," I said, "but not because you need someone to hold you up. I want to stay beside you while you stand." Her eyes shone. Then she looked at Preston. "There's your answer. And here's mine. I choose the school. I choose the fight I can respect. And I choose the man who knows staying is an action, not a leash." Preston left without another word. Men like him prefer rooms where applause can be managed. That night, he had none. The benefit raised enough to cover the roof documentation, the attorney's retainer, and 2 months of emergency operating costs. It did not save everything. Real life rarely solves itself in one emotional evening, but it changed the direction of the story. Mrs. Patel filed non-profit paperwork. Marcus's father repaired the roof with volunteers. Ray and I finished the rear classroom wall properly. The reporter who had printed the false caption wrote a new story about parents protecting a neighborhood music school. Preston still pushed. He sent letters, he made calls, but his power looked smaller in daylight. Grace stopped taking his calls alone. She stopped apologizing before saying no. When Atlanta called again, she declined in writing and copied the foundation board with a proposal for an independent partnership instead. I watched her press send from my office computer, her face pale but steady. "Do you feel brave?" I asked. "No," she said. "I feel nauseous." "Close enough." She laughed and leaned her forehead against my shoulder. This time I kissed her. Softly. Once. A question, not a claim. She answered by touching my wrist and smiling against my mouth, like relief had finally found a language. 2 months after the night she nearly stood me up, Grace and I went back to Bellamy's. We chose the same corner table. The waiter recognized me and had the mercy not to mention the 2 untouched menus from before. Grace arrived on time in a yellow dress under a denim jacket. I stood when she came in. "You stayed," she said. "You arrived. I'm building a reputation for not running from tables where I'm wanted." Dinner was ordinary in the best way. No break-ins, no ultimatums, no men with umbrellas outside. We talked about the school's new board, Ray's terrible singing, and Grace's plan to add adult beginner classes for people who thought it was too late. "It is not too late," she said, firm as scripture. For music, for most honest things. After dinner, rain began again. We stood under the same awning where she had cried, where I had almost chosen pride over listening. Grace slipped her hand into mine. "I hated that you saw me like that. Crying. Needing. I didn't hate it. I know. That scared me more. Why? Because when need doesn't make someone powerful, and it doesn't make someone disappear, you have to rethink everything." I turned toward her. "I need things too." "I know," she said. "You need black coffee, quiet mornings, and people who don't treat your steadiness like furniture." I laughed. "Furniture pays my mortgage too." She squeezed my hand. "I'm serious." "So am I." I looked through the rain at the blurred lights of Darby Avenue. "I need honesty before certainty. I need you not to protect me by leaving first, and I need us to move slow enough that fear doesn't get to drive." She nodded. "I can do that. What do you need?" She took a long breath. "I need room to be strong without being alone. I need to choose you, not hide inside you. And sometimes, when I forget people can stay, I need you to remind me without punishing me for forgetting. I can do that." She looked up at me, rain silvering the ends of her hair. "Then don't leave." This time the words were not desperate. They were tender. They carried memory, choice, and the kind of promise neither of us would have trusted at the beginning. "I'm not leaving," I said. Grace smiled. "Good. Because I'm not either." We walked to my truck under one umbrella, badly shared. Half my shoulder got wet. Half hers did too. Neither of us moved away. A year later, the Miller Music Room still stood on Darby Avenue. Not untouched. Better than untouched. The windows had new locks, the recital room had a repaired ceiling, and my shop had a standing discount for any child who believed glitter improved woodwork. Grace became executive director of the non-profit board she built, and she learned to let other people carry keys. On Thursday nights, she came down to my shop while I closed up. Sometimes we went to dinner. Sometimes we ate takeout on the recital room floor. We still argued. She still tried to do too much herself. I still got quiet when fear made me expect goodbye. But now we named those things before they became walls. The little jar labeled Piano Tuning Fund returned to the shelf. Under it, Grace taped a note in her neat handwriting. Staying is an action. I asked her once if it reminded her of Preston. No, she said, taking my hand. It reminds me of me. That was when I understood the real ending of that rainy night. I had thought the story began because I stayed. But Grace had been learning to stay with herself long before she asked it of me. I was not the man who saved her. I was the man who got invited into the life she chose. And every time I hear a student upstairs stumble through the first uncertain notes of a song, I remember the woman in the rain, crying outside a restaurant, asking me not to leave. I remember how close I came to walking away from the truth, because my pride was easier to carry than hope. Sometimes being stood up is not rejection. Sometimes it is the moment before someone arrives carrying the part of themselves they are most afraid you will not want. And if you are lucky enough to be trusted with that truth, the bravest thing you can do is stay long enough to see what they choose when fear no longer gets the final word. If this story made you think about someone who asked you to stay, or someone you wish had waited long enough to hear the truth, leave a comment with one word. Stay. And if you believe love should be a choice, not a cage, subscribe for more stories like this.